Hello everyone and welcome once again to Lit Lessons with GCSE Memes. Today's session will be looking at Animal Farm by George Orwell. We'll be looking at the dogs in the text. That's Jessie, Bluebell, Pincher and their 9 puppies. And we'll be doing some character analysis, looking at the key quotes, the techniques and the context before ending with a meme about them. So, before we go any further, I think it's important that we do a recap of the key words. And the key word today is one that I'd expect those of you looking for higher marks to use in your GCSE English literature for Animal Farm. And that is allegory, a story with a hidden meaning. And this certainly applies to Animal Farm because George Orwell wrote it as a retelling of the story of the Russian Revolution. And what he essentially decided to do was retell the story with Russians as animals to show how ridiculous and absurd some of the events were during the revolution. Orwell himself was a huge believer in equality, so would have probably celebrated the original or the initial revolution and the building of communism up until the point where it became corrupted, and he would have found that incredibly frustrating, as he himself was involved in revolutions in Spain to try and increase levels of equality across the world. So do keep that in mind, and I think it's really important at this moment to say that context is so important for Animal Farm. Animal Farm has way more context behind it than many other texts on the English literature GCSE, and that makes it both slightly more difficult to revise at first because there's a bit more to know, but also way easier to pick up context marks for once you know it. So do make sure you know your context behind the novella, because it will serve you so well in your GCSE examinations. So today we're looking at the dogs. So we must know what they represent, because all the characters in Animal Farm represent a figure or figures from the Russian Revolution. And these characters, the dogs, actually represent the NKVD or the KGB, the Russian Secret Police Force. And what these characters, or the real police force did, was carried out executions and exiles on anyone who threatened the powers during the revolution. They would kill anyone or throw anyone out of the country who Joseph Stalin felt threatened by as he carried out his regime. And it's obviously very similar in Animal Farm. The dogs help Napoleon carry out his regime and execute and throw out anyone from the country or the farm who cause him problems. So with that in mind, here are some of the words that I would use to describe both the dogs and the Russian Secret Police Force. They're both brutal and aggressive, they're manipulated, they're loyal, and they're a vital tool for Stalin or Napoleon. So we're going to go over these words. We're going to have a look how they definitely applied to the dogs throughout the novella. So first and foremost, and the first word I would actually use to describe the dogs is that they are brutal. And we see this very clearly and strangely right at the start of the text, before Napoleon even is in power in the farm. And this is clear during Old Major's speech. The dogs themselves actually try to attack and kill some rats who are listening to the speech and listening to the commotion. And this immediately foreshadows the violence of the dogs. Jessie and Bluebell's violence also mirrors the violence of their puppies later on in the text. The puppies are taken away by Napoleon in chapter 3, and we'll be looking at that in a next slide as well. They return in chapter 5 as fierce looking as wolves as they chase Snowball off the farm. And this similarly used to describe them really kind of reflects that they are not your normal farm dogs. They are far more vicious, far more deadly straight away. And this kind of is continued throughout the text, as now that they are introduced in chapter 5, the words growl, growling, growls are repeated to describe their actions as they scare others into not speaking out against the regime, not acting out against any news provided by Squealer or Napoleon. But the most violent and most disturbing scene for me is this one here, chapter 7. And in chapter 7, we see them carry out a wide range of executions very, very swiftly and quickly. And the adverb choice in this quote here, the dogs promptly tore their throats out about some pigs they killed for confessing their sins, immediately shows you their frightening efficiency. And just after this quotation, we have a whole paragraph of listing essentially the animals that they kill who confess to certain sins that they've committed on the farm. So immediately we get this sense that they are incredibly frightening and very, very efficient killers at that. So that's the first word I use to describe them. But I don't want us to just think of them as kind of evil characters, because they themselves are victims. As mentioned before, they themselves were taking off their mothers from an early age. And these 9 puppies essentially were taken away from their mothers so that they could be brought up to be emotionless and amoral, not know right from wrong, only understand Napoleon's orders. And that immediately means that they've had no childhood whatsoever, that they essentially are brought up as kind of warriors almost in this novel. As well as that, they are kept completely away from the other characters. It can only be reached by a ladder, and immediately that is another symbol that they are a secret creation of Stalin's or Napoleon's. They are the secret police. They're out of sight, they're out of reach of others who cannot use them. Only Napoleon gets to use them whenever he wishes. And the fact that they are secluded from the other animals means as well that they don't have any loyalty, any love for any other character when they come back in chapter 5. And that makes it much, much easier for Napoleon to get the dogs to hurt the other animals, to intimidate the other animals as he so wishes. So they are victims themselves to some extent as well, so do consider them as that too. And these are the other words that I would use to describe them as well. Loyal, as we expect dogs to be, and also a vital tool for Napoleon's bidding. And this is most obvious that they're loyal during their reading of the 7 Commandments. They don't want to read anything else. They're good readers, but they only recite the 7 Commandments. And this shows you their love of rules and their love of order, which certainly applies to the police force during Stalin's time as well. And there's a lovely hint once again used through the dogs here. Just after Snowball gets thrown off the farm, it is noticed that they wag their tails the same way as the dogs used to Mr. Jones. And immediately we get this hint in chapter 5 that Napoleon essentially is becoming a man, is reverting back to the kind of farm the way Mr. Jones used to run it. So we get the cyclical structure, these cycles, already presented in the text through the dogs too. They're also a vital tool for Napoleon, and they become omnipresent, always around during the delivery of any new news to the animals. So they always patrol Squealer while Squealer delivers his propaganda and his new changes to the farm life, so that no one can speak out against them. And also they continually guard Napoleon. At first they guard his door, then they guard his bed at night as he becomes more and more paranoid. But throughout the text they become more and more obvious and more mentioned as they become, as the whole farm becomes a more violent and frightening place for the animals to live in. So, it's up to you now to have a bit of a go at either of these 2 questions. These are kind of your GCSE style questions as always. One of them is character analysis. The other one's a bit more theme based, so you can bring in other characters too if you want to stretch yourselves. Okay, do have a bit of a pause here and have a go at this. How long you spend on this is completely up to you. It's your revision. And don't forget as well, I will always put a full text link in the description to help you with that. As always promised as well, I have included a GCS meme. I found one which included a really cute golden retriever, so I thought I'd put that one in. And I think this one kind of summarises that lovely quote of the 9 puppies growing up to become as fierce as wolves, as shown there. So thank you very much for watching. As always, you know where to request things in the comment section. Do as well like and subscribe this for more content. I'll be doing more Animal Farm videos, and check out our Instagram page. Thank you.